I never imagined that my bachelor party would turn into such a catastrophe. From the beginning, I thought it would be a night of harmless fun with my closest friends, a final hurrah before I married the man of my dreams. But life has a way of surprising you, sometimes in the most painful ways. My name is Abigail Turner. I'm 28, a marketing executive, and I've always considered myself a pretty straightforward person. I'm organized, meticulous, and until recently I believed I was firmly on the path to happily ever after with my fiancé, Daniel and I met 3 years ago at a conference in Chicago. He was speaking on a panel about tech innovations, and I was there representing my firm. We clicked instantly, and what started as a professional connection quickly blossomed into a deep, passionate relationship. Daniel is everything I could have hoped for in a partner: kind, intelligent, and incredibly supportive. Our friends often joke that we were the perfect couple, and for a long time I believed them. My bridesmaids, Sarah, Megan, and Lily, decided to throw me a bachelor party in Las Vegas. It was supposed to be a weekend getaway filled with laughter, a few drinks, and maybe a little bit of dancing, nothing too wild. I wasn't the type to go crazy, and they respected that. We arrived in Vegas on a Friday evening, the city's lights dazzling against the dark sky. The hotel was luxurious, our suite even more so. As we settled in, Lily handed me a sash that read bride to be in glittery letters, and we all laughed. The night began with a fancy dinner at one of the city's top restaurants, followed by a show. Everything was going according to plan. Then we hit the club. The music was loud, the lights were flashing, and the energy was electric. I wasn't much of a dancer, but Sarah and Megan pulled me onto the dance floor. We laughed and twirled, losing ourselves in the music. That's when I saw him. He was standing by the bar, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. There was something magnetic about him, something that drew me in despite myself. He had dark hair, a chiseled jaw, and a look of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Our eyes met, and I felt a jolt of electricity. I tried to ignore him, tried to focus on my friends and the celebration, but he made his way over to me. "Hi, I'm Wyatt," he said, his voice smooth and captivating. "Abigail," I replied, feeling a strange mix of excitement and guilt. We talked for a while, shouting over the music. He was charming, funny, and incredibly attractive. My friends were busy dancing, and for a moment, it felt like it was just the two of us in the crowded club. "Can I buy you a drink?" he asked. I hesitated, knowing I should say no, but something inside me said yes. "Sure," I said, and we made our way to the bar. We talked more, and with each passing minute, I felt my resolve weakening. I told myself it was harmless, just a bit of fun before the wedding, but deep down I knew it was more than that. There was an undeniable attraction between us, a pull that I couldn't resist. As the night wore on, we ended up on the dance floor again, his hands on my waist, pulling me closer. Our faces were inches apart, and I could feel his breath on my skin. My heart was pounding, my mind racing. I knew it was wrong, but in that moment I didn't care. Then he kissed me. It was like a spark igniting a fire. I kissed him back, losing myself in the sensation. We stumbled out of the club, barely able to keep our hands off each other. We ended up in his hotel room, and one thing led to another. We spent the night together, and it was an experience I will never forget. I woke up the next morning, the weight of my actions crashing down on me. Wyatt was still asleep beside me, his arm draped over my waist. I felt a wave of nausea, not from the alcohol, but from the realization of what I had done. I slipped out of bed, gathered my clothes, and left the room as quietly as I could. Back in our suite, I found Sarah and Megan already up, sipping coffee and chatting. They looked up as I walked in, concern etched on their faces. "Abigail, where were you?" Sarah asked. I went for a walk," I lied, my voice shaky. They didn't seem to believe me, but they didn't press further. I spent the rest of the weekend in a daze, trying to act normal, but inside I was falling apart. The guilt was overwhelming, and I couldn't shake the image of Daniel's face from my mind. I had betrayed him in the worst possible way. When I got back to New York, Daniel was waiting for me at the airport. He greeted me with a smile and a kiss, and I felt like the worst person in the world. I tried to push the guilt aside, to focus on the wedding and our future, but it was always there, lurking in the back of my mind. The days turned into weeks, and I threw myself into wedding preparations, hoping to distract myself. But every time I looked at Daniel, every time he smiled at me, the guilt came rushing back. I knew I couldn't keep it a secret forever. 2 weeks before the wedding, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to tell him. We were sitting on the couch, going over the final guest list, when I took a deep breath and said, "Daniel, we need to talk." He looked up, concern in his eyes. "What's wrong, Abigail?" I felt my throat tighten, my heart racing. "There's something I need to tell you, something that happened in Vegas." He frowned, setting the guest list aside. "What is it?" I told him everything, every detail, every emotion. I watched as his face went from confusion to shock to anger. When I was done, there was a long, painful silence. "How could you?" he finally said, his voice shaking. "How could you do this to us?" Tears streamed down my face. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake, a horrible mistake." "A mistake," he echoed, his eyes filled with hurt. "You cheated on me, Abigail. How am I supposed to forgive that?" "I don't expect you to forgive me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't keep it from you. You deserve to know the truth." He stood up, pacing the room. "I trusted you. I thought we were happy." We are, I insisted, but even I didn't believe my words. The trust had been shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. Daniel left that night, saying he needed time to think. I was left alone with my thoughts and my regrets. The wedding was postponed, our future uncertain. I tried to keep busy, to give him space, but every day without him felt like a lifetime. A week later, he came over to talk. We sat in silence for a long time before he finally spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what happened," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I love you, Abigail, but I don't know if I can get past this." "I understand," I said, my heart breaking. "I love you too, Daniel, more than anything." He looked at me, his eyes filled with sadness. "Maybe we need some time apart to figure out what we really want." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Maybe." We hugged one last time and he left. As the door closed behind him, I felt a sense of finality, a realization that I had lost the best thing that ever happened to me. Months passed, and we stayed in touch, but things were never the same. The wedding was officially called off, and we went our separate ways. I tried to move on, to find happiness again, but it was difficult. The memory of that night in Vegas haunted me, a constant reminder of my mistake. I learned a hard lesson about love, trust, and the consequences of my actions. Daniel eventually moved on, finding someone new, someone who could give him the trust and loyalty he deserved. I wished him nothing but happiness, even as I struggled to find my own. My bachelor party was a turning point, a moment that changed everything. I lost the man I loved, and I had no one to blame but myself. The pain was a constant companion, a reminder of what I had thrown away. And as much as I wished I could go back and change things, I knew I had to live with the choices I had made. Life went on, and so did I, but the scars of that night never fully healed. I became more cautious, more guarded, afraid of making the same mistake again. I learned to value trust, to cherish the people in my life, and to never take love for granted. But the regret, the sadness, it never completely faded. It was a part of me, a reminder of what I had lost and the price I had paid. And as I looked back on that fateful night, I knew it would always be a part of my story, a chapter that could never be erased. 6 months after our breakup, I received a call from Sarah, one of my bridesmaids. We hadn't spoken much since the wedding was called off, and hearing her voice brought back a flood of memories. "Abigail, we need to talk," she said, her tone serious. "What is it, Sarah?" "It's about Wyatt, the guy from Vegas." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't thought about him in months, trying to push the memory of that night as far back in my mind as possible. "What about him?" "He's in New York. He reached out to me looking for you." "Why would he do that?" I asked, my voice shaking. "He said he needs to talk to you." It sounded important. I felt a mixture of curiosity and dread. "Did he say why no?" But he mentioned something about a misunderstanding. "Abigail, I think you should meet him against my better judgment," I agreed. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. As I walked in, I spotted him immediately. He looked the same, though there was a hint of anxiety in his eyes. "Abigail," he said, standing up as I approached. "Why," I replied, taking a seat opposite him. "What's this about? I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I needed to clear something up," he began. "That night in Vegas, it wasn't what you think." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. "I didn't want to do this over the phone. The truth is, I was paid to seduce you." I stared at him, my mind reeling. "What are you talking about? Someone paid me to find you, to get close to you." "It was a setup. Who would do that?" I asked, feeling a mixture of disbelief and anger. He hesitated. "Your friend Megan." "Megan," I repeated, stunned. "Why would she do that?" "I don't know the details, but she said something about proving a point about you not being ready for marriage." I didn't realize the extent of it until later. I felt a wave of betrayal wash over me. Megan, one of my closest friends, had orchestrated this. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I couldn't live with myself knowing what I did." "I'm sorry, Abigail. I truly am." I stood up, my mind spinning. "I need to go." As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief. I had been set up, manipulated by someone I trusted, but it didn't change the fact that I had still made a terrible choice. I confronted Megan that evening. She didn't deny it. "I was trying to protect you," she said, her eyes filled with regret. "I thought if you made a mistake, you'd see that you weren't ready to marry Daniel. You had no right," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You destroyed my life, Megan. You destroyed my relationship." "I'm sorry, Abigail," she whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far, but it was too late for apologies. The damage was done, and nothing could undo it." As I walked away, I realized that my bachelor party was not just a night of mistakes, but a series of betrayals and misunderstandings. The weight of those events would stay with me forever, a constant reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of deception. In the end, I lost more than just Daniel. I lost a part of myself, a part that believed in the goodness of people and the sanctity of friendships. And as I moved forward, I carried with me the lessons of that night, hoping to never repeat the same mistakes, but forever haunted by the memory of what could have been. A year passed, and I did my best to rebuild my life. I found solace in my work, throwing myself into projects and climbing the corporate ladder. My friends, or what remained of them, were supportive, though things were never quite the same. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I bumped into Daniel. He looked different, more mature, as if the weight of our past had shaped him into someone new. "Abigail," he said, his voice gentle. "Daniel," I replied, my heart aching at the sight of him. We decided to grab a coffee and catch up. It was awkward at first, the wound still fresh, but slowly the conversation flowed. "I heard about Megan," he said quietly. "Yes, it was quite the revelation," I replied, bitterness tinging my words. "I'm sorry you've had to go through that. I never wanted any of this for you, neither did I." There was a long silence before he spoke again. "I'm seeing someone I'm glad," I said, forcing a smile. "You deserve to be happy." "You do too, Abigail," I nodded, though deep down I wasn't sure if happiness was something I could find again. We parted ways with a hug, a final goodbye to a chapter of our lives that had ended in tragedy.